Hello there, Ray here, and today guys I'd like to show you UnderLoader version 2, an extremely fast nether-based pigman farm as well as nether mobs. This thing produces an insane amount of drops per hour using the new 1.15 nether portals. If we go ahead and hop through this nether portal, we can see what's on the other side. We got a ton of nether portals over here. This uses a unique concept I showed you guys in the original UnderLoad farm, as well as other farms I showed you guys where you can have mobs spawn directly inside of the nether portal or have them spawn right beside it, allowing the mob to be teleported over into the other dimension instantly or very quickly. Therefore, once a mob is no longer in this dimension, the game will see that it can go ahead and spawn in more mobs, allowing you to get large amounts of mobs to be spawned into the game. So this is in the nether dimension. We went ahead and we just removed the majority of the blocks in the area. As when it comes to spawning in mobs, the game tries to spawn in mobs according to how many blocks there is in the area. So if there's tons of blocks, it's going to kind of spread the mobs throughout all these layers of blocks. But if there's very few blocks to spread the mobs across, they will put them all at the very bottom parts of the world. And they won't have to spend any time trying to figure if mobs should be spawned up above this area. And with this, you get more mob spawns with less layers. Now in the nether dimension, quite a few mobs can be found here. You can find magma cubes, ghast, pigmen zombies, as well as wither skeletons, blazes, and endermen. Now of all these mobs, some of them are unique to some areas, like wither skeletons, and blazes are unique to nether fortresses. So they only spawn inside of those and you won't find them in the rest of the nether. So mobs that can spawn inside this farm are mobs that are not affected by the light level, as the nether portals put off quite a bit of light, with their light level being 11. And most mobs will not try to spawn in such a high level of light. But here in the nether, there's quite a bit of fire sources, so some mobs are kind of immune to this. So magma cubes can spawn in high light levels, as well as ghast and zombie pigmen. But you won't find any endermen spawning inside this farm, as they are affected by light level when spawning in. So the game will attempt to try to find a spot in the world around the player where it can put in a mob, and the mob will not run into any blocks around it. So it can't spawn them over here on these slabs, and it can't spawn them like on top of these slabs either. But it can spawn them inside the nether portal, as the nether portal block doesn't have any collision, so your player can kind of move right through it without bumping into it. That's what the game checks when putting the mob into the game. So the game will see all this obsidian down here and see a nice area where mobs can spawn in. And they'll put a mob directly above the obsidian, and they'll happen to be inside the nether portal, where they will immediately teleport over into the overworld. Once in the overworld, they'll be in a different dimension, and therefore the limit that the game puts on the number of mobs per dimension never reaches that maximum number. So the game allows for a maximum of 70 hostile mobs to be spawned in one dimension at any given time while the chunks are loaded. So if we go to the center of this farm, the entire farm is a massive circle, and my count's AFKing in the very center of it. And what the game will do will try to spawn in mobs in a sphere around the player with a radius of 128 blocks. Now there is no blocks above the player, and there is no blocks on any of the sides other than where these nether portals are at. The game is kind of limited where it can put the mobs in. It'll end up only putting them inside this nether portal. Therefore, every mob that comes into the game will immediately be teleported by those nether portals and be taken out of the nether dimension, therefore freeing up the mob cap so more mobs can spawn in. So let's go ahead and follow a mob that gets teleported over into the overworld and see what exactly happens. So we'll go ahead and send in some pigmen through this portal. You see they're being teleported in. And we'll also put a couple magma cubes through here as well. And we'll put a ghast in there. They'll get teleported over into overworld. And if we hop through ourselves, you can kind of see how they're getting sorted out. Now, a few different things are happening in this area, which have changed from the original design of the UnderLoad, as through the versions they have changed the way nether portals work. As you can see over here, we have a minecart which has a boat riding it, and it is on some power rails going back and forth. This allows us to have a boat which is touching the nether portal and able to push any mobs that are in the center of it over a little bit to the side. So if some pigmen come in, you'll see they'll be centered in the center of the portal, but the boat is pushing them off to the side. This way they don't completely stack up all in the same spot, where they would eventually start taking max cramming. And then they would die and start dropping items which would immediately teleport back over into the nether dimension. With a slight nudge from this boat, the pigmen are able to kind of shift and start pushing each other. When the pigmen are directly on top of each other, they're not going to push each other. This allows us to eventually push the pigmen out of the portal, and where they will fall down and die from fall damage, because we have them dropping far enough distance that they will hit the ground too hard and die. The system can also handle magma cubes of all sizes, so if I stand here we can watch some different sized magma cubes come through the system. So little ones are not really affected by too much. They get shifted off to the side and they will eventually get pushed over. The other size magma cubes can end up kind of in the center of the portal, but they will try to immediately jump and move to either right or left. So you can kind of see these guys. They're trying to jump forward and they're spawned directly inside of the obsidian, so they're able to clip through it and continue moving in the direction they want to. Once the magma cubes get pushed down to the bottom, we have some wither roses here, which will give them the wither effect, and this will cause them to take a massive amount of damage and it'll kill them very quickly. They will start splitting up into smaller pieces, and eventually they'll split up into the tiniest pieces and then they will die. When the large as well as the medium pieces break up, they can drop magma ream, which is going to be collected. And the way that we're collecting the loot is we just have the wither roses sitting on top of some soul sand, which is slightly lower than a full block, which allows items pulled in by the hoppers underneath, and then they just get piped over into these chests over here. You can see some of the loot we got so far. Now the system can also handle ghast. When they come to the portal, they're quite massive, so they actually clip into the nether portal beside it. So you can see these ghasts are taking up this entire area. What happens is they get pushed over by the boat, and since they are already clipping inside of this obsidian block here as well as this glass block here, they're able to get pushed over into contact with this wither rose we have hidden behind this glass piece. Then they'll start taking damage from the wither rose and they will die very quickly. The loot from the ghast will drop from the center of them, so if we watch in the center, we'll see it drop its loot, and this will allow it to fall down to the bottom where it will be picked up and put into the chest down below as well. By having the wither roses hidden behind this glass piece here, we can allow it so that magma cubes as well as pigmen don't accidentally end up over here and drop their loot where we cannot pick it up. So ghast can end up getting pushed in 4 different directions and go to this one, that one, and we also got 2 in the back which rarely get used. If a ghast would happen to get past this sweeping device here, it would die on these roses over here. All 4 sides are also set up to take in large magma cubes so they can fall all the way down to the bottom. Now the boat that's riding a minecart can also pick up mobs, so whichever mobs come through the portal first are going to be picked up in this boat here. But they will not affect the farm, as the minecart will move back and forth no matter if there's mobs in it or there's no mobs in it. And if you don't want any of your mobs to go inside the boat, you can put something else in there, like a chicken or a pig, and that way they're unable to hop into it. Now the reason why we have a boat riding a minecart, instead of just having a boat here trying to push the mobs out, if a boat is all by itself, it's just a single entity and they're able to get teleported through the nether portal. But if an entity is riding another entity, it is not possible for it to go through another portal. This way the boat can come in contact with the nether portal block over here, but will not be teleported by it. Now this killing chamber is very similar to the first version of the mini UnderLoad, but is quite different from the original UnderLoad design, which is what you see around me, as this is the original world where the first design was built up. This is due to some changes that's made with nether portals. In the past, when a mob would go through another portal, and if there wasn't a portal to link it up in the overworld, the mob would end up being teleported over into the overworld as if there was another portal linked up with it. Therefore, it's possible to have portals on the nether side, but no portals on the overworld side, and what we did is we just allowed them to teleport down inside of these solid blocks. And the game would just stick ghast and pigmen and magma cubes inside of here, and they would be sitting in here just suffocating, and they eventually die with their items getting squished and pushed up to the top and getting pushed along these water streams here all the way to the center where they could be collected. But in 1.15 they changed it so mobs will not go through a nether portal if there's not an overworld nether portal to link it up with. So I can show you guys an example of what I'm talking about. If you would come over here and if we would make a nether portal that is far away from other ones so it doesn't link up to it. So let's go over here. And if this nether portal would be placed over here, and if you would have a mob go through it, the game is going to try to look for another one of these portals but in the overworld to try to link it up with. So let's say you have a mob and such as like a magma cube that hops into this portal. You see it will not be teleported by it. Doesn't matter how the mobs go into it, they won't get teleported because the game's saying, hey, I'm looking for another one of these portals in the overworld and I'm not able to find it, therefore I cannot send these mobs over. But if a player would hop through this portal, so if I can go into survival and I can hop through this portal, you can also do this in creative, you'll see that it does work. It will then generate a brand new nether portal over here. Just put it into the game. Now if we go ahead and we head back over to the nether again, we should be able to see the mobs are able to now be sent through again. So this mob went ahead and he touched it. And any mob that now touches the portal will be able to be teleported because it found a portal on the overworld side to link it up with. This could be considered a bug, as you would think anything that goes through another portal should generate a overworld nether portal to link it up, not just players. But even if this mechanic changes, the initial farm design will always work the same, as you will want the mobs to end up at a portal where you can kind of control them and get their loots. But the biggest change that's made to nether portals in 1.15 is they have massively reduced the amount of lag that occurs when the game is trying to figure out where a mob should go once it goes into the portal. So if a mob or player would hop into this portal, the game used to struggle to try to search a really large area around where it should think the mob should end up, looking for another one of these purple portal blocks, and have to search through millions of blocks, checking them to see if it was this type of block in order to teleport the mob. And then if there was a short delay and then another player or mob went into another portal, the game would have to do all the searches all over again. It would kind of forget where the portal put the last mob, causing another massive amount of lag. Pretty much every time somebody went to a portal, it had to do all this checking. But now with these new nether portal changes, every time a mob goes through, the game is easily able to find the corresponding nether portal on the other side and send the player or mob over there without much lag at all. Now the first time the mob goes over there, you'll notice a little bit of lag, but once it kind of links the two portals together, every mob that goes through for thereafter will have a smooth time going through. And this is the biggest change between the first version of this as well as this version. Now with the previous design, it uses the old nether portals. So before, when we turn this farm on, it would really lag down the game. If you'd have your F3 up, it would be about 1 to 5 frames per second. And the game would really struggle trying to figure out where all the mobs that would be spawning inside the farm would have to go. So let me show you guys the difference. We're currently back here in 1.12. And if I go ahead and turn on mob spawning, that game is actually currently frozen right now, but it's slowly going to pick up after it figures where all the entities have to go. As you see, the entity count hasn't changed at all. It still says 48. And you can see how slow the game's going with this repeater clock here. But over time, it will kind of pick up a little bit as the game starts figuring out where each of the portals is supposed to send the mobs. But the game often only runs at like 2 to 5 ticks per second, when it should be running around 20. So the game is extremely slow right now, and if I try to switch game modes, it takes quite a while. And if you even look at the mobs, you might be able to see some around here. So there's some over here. And you notice how they're just kind of lingering here as the game's running really slow. So they will be teleported as soon as game understands that they're actually inside the portal, but the game is running slow, so everything's kind of delayed. So there you see, they got teleported away. So now that they fixed nether portals, this farm of mine, as well as other farms I've designed over the years with similar concepts, are now extremely useful to have in survival. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it is like in 1.15. So let's go ahead and try out the farm after the changes. So let's go ahead and just turn on mob spawning, and I have F3 showing up right here. Now there's going to be a slight lag spike. You can see right here, this is milliseconds per tick. Normally this should be around 50. Anything lower is good, anything higher is bad. But once the game kind of figures out where all the nether portals go, this will drop down to average just over 50 milliseconds per tick, meaning the game is running slightly slower than what it should be, but it's still hundreds of times better than it was in previous versions. So you can see how it's speeding up here. Now it's going down to lower digits as it's able to keep up. And once in a while it hit a little spike, but then it'll go back down once again. So the game's actually able to handle the mobs very quickly. Right now the game's actually running 5 times faster than what it needs to be. And typically running about 60 frames per second. It's a little bit lower just because of all the particles as well as all the animations that are occurring on my screen. You can see this is an insane improvement compared to previous nether portal mechanics. This means many of the insane farms I have showed you guys in the past using nether portals cannot be built up on servers without them immediately crashing. There has been some other changes since the original design that I showed you guys. One major one is the way that mobs spawn into the game. As before, it would use the sub chunks of the game. So if you press F3 and B, you can see this, which shows you what a chunk is, as well as it shows you individual sub chunks, which are the spaces between these blue lines. And the game would kind of check each of these square at a time. Back then, the game would just keep track of how many of these sub chunks were occupied by blocks, and that would affect the spawning rates of the mobs. So as long as you had your farm lower than this blue line here, it would be the fastest that it could be. But now what the game actually does is it looks at the individual blocks. So every little line here, as well as invisible lines between these. So for every block that moves up in the world, it will keep track of that and spawn mobs according to that. So ideally you want to keep the height of your farm as low as possible. So in the previous design, it had 2 nether portal sets sitting on top of each other, which gave us more areas for mobs to spawn around the player. But with this change, I went ahead and removed the top one, so we just got 1 layer of nether portals. Each of these nether portals are at the full length, being 21 blocks across, and they are high enough to let a ghast spawn inside of here. So they're 4 blocks tall instead of just a normal 3 block tall nether portal. And the entire area is filled in with these nether portals, even the area down here which would normally be occupied by bedrock. And on top of the portals, we went ahead and put in some slabs to prevent mobs spawning on top of it. Now if you wanted to, you could also do block update suppression to remove the majority of the blocks in the nether portal itself, because you only really need the very bottom one to teleport the mob, and you need the obsidian to have the mob spawn in it. This would lower the amount of blocks that the game checks. It would increase the rates, not enough to make it worthwhile. But with these changes that they made to the game, they also decreased the number of mobs that spawn per hour when comparing it with older versions. So let's go ahead and compare this new farm with the old version. If we go over here, this is where I showcased it. And this shows some of the rates of the farm when ran it in 1.9. So the old farm had about 90,000 spawning spaces, which is an insane amount of spawning spaces. But the new farm has just half that many, as it only has 1 layer instead of 2 layers. But that still gives you plenty of spawning spaces for the game to find places to put in new mobs. Now 1.9, this farm produced around 2.4 million items per hour, but the farm also ran at an extremely slow speed, about 1/10 of what the game normally should be running at. So essentially everything was kind of running in slow mode, because it had trouble figuring out where all the mobs should be teleported to when going through the nether portals. So testing it in 1.15, it produces around 260,000 items per hour, which is an insane amount and is almost equivalent to this number here when figuring in the lag that comes from it. So that will give you around 1.6k gold blocks per hour, which is a crazy amount of gold if you think about it. You can build a whole fortress out of gold just in 1 hour. You also will get over 100,000 rotten flesh per hour, which is just under about half of all the items that you'll get from this farm. You also get about 1.8k ghast tears per hour and about 3.4k gunpowder just from these ghasts that are dying. When it comes to magma cubes, they'll drop to the magma cream. You'll get about 1.4k magma cream per hour. You also can get feathers from this farm, and you'll get a little over 800 feathers per hour. It's pretty crazy to think how much loot you can get from this farm. And quite a bit of it's pretty good, like the gold is useful, the ghast tears are useful, and even the magma cream is useful as well. You can also turn it into magma blocks if you want to. Overall, I'm really impressed by the new portals, and I'm surprised that it actually produces quite a bit of items, despite the mob spawning algorithm being changed. Now, if you kind of want to see how much loot this is, so all these chests here, they're full of rotten flesh. You can get all of this. That's the last one there. And then these are all full of gold nuggets. You can see there is a lot of them. And this is all just from a 8-minute test. And here you can see the miscellaneous stuff that you can also get. The gunpowder is from the ghast, as well as the ghast tears. You get the magma cream from the magma cubes. And the raw chicken as well as the feathers come from pigman chicken jockeys. Now the jockeys themselves won't teleport because mobs that are running other mobs won't teleport through nether portals. But the pigman will despawn on top of it, and then the chicken will get teleported over. And that's how you can get feathers as well as raw chicken. It should be really exciting to go ahead and test other crazy farms I've showed you guys in the past using nether portals to see how they do with these new changes to the game. So you got that to look forward to in a future video. If you enjoyed looking at crazy farms which can be done in vanilla survival, I have a whole playlist which I'll link down below if you want your brain to burst with some crazy stuff that can be done. And if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like as well as share with others so they can learn about what's coming to Minecraft with 1.15 and the new possibilities of insane farms. And if you'd like to be there as we design these crazy farms, we often do it during our snapshot streams every Wednesday and Friday, so make sure to turn on notifications on YouTube as well as follow me on Twitter and join the ProtoTech Community Discord. I'll also provide the real download in the description if you're crazy enough to build this in your very own world. I would like to thank you guys for watching. Bye bye!